What makes the achievement of emotional sobriety so difficult is the habits we have, the patterns we have in our behavior, the habitual ways that we've come to think about things. We have to really become aware of those things in order to challenge them, because the consciousness that has created a lot of the problems in our life cannot solve it, cannot change things. So what happens is the first step is waking up. We have a guest presenter tonight, Herb Kaighan, my dear friend and colleague and fellow traveler in recovery. And we've been on a journey together for many, 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 many years now, 38 years, actually. The whole time Herb has been in, and it's been an incredible experience for me, and I know for Herb, and he has a lot to share with us tonight. But let me just put this in the context. You know, we've been exploring now for almost 40 some weeks now on how the steps help us achieve emotional sobriety. And we've talked about steps 6 and 7 really being the pivot step towards developing the best possible attitudes and behaviors we can have in our life, towards our relationship with others, towards our relationship with ourselves. And as we've talked about over and over again, is how as soon as one intention is set in the steps, then we're going to get a set of instructions on how to start doing that. And, you know, steps 8, 9, and 10 were these steps where we're looking at how we improve our relationship with ourselves and with others. And it comes by taking responsibility. You know, Herb and I have talked about this in our workshops, as taking radical responsibility for our behavior. And we talked about how 8 and 9 kind of shift the way that we're functioning in relationships. And to think of step 10 is now integrating, because 8 and 9 are about the past. And it's not just about going back and living and dealing with the unfinished business from our past, but bringing what we're learning into the present. Step 10 is integrating these ideas and principles in our life right now, today. That's what we did in step 10. Well, we're going to continue to do that in 11 and 12. It's all about integrating what we're learning. And now, without anything else, without any further ado, I'll turn this over to Herb, and he'll start to talk to us about step 11 and the power of this step and how it relates to our emotional sobriety. Herb, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alan. My name is Herb. I am an alcoholic. I'm an active member. And I first met Alan, who was the medical director of the hospital in the recovery unit that my wife put herself in an inpatient basis. I went there to support her recovery. And I got caught in the draft because I didn't know that I didn't know that I had a drinking problem, eventually understanding that that was an alcoholic problem, understanding that there was a solution to that called Alcoholics Anonymous, at least in my experience. And it was a very slow process. February 20th, 1984, Dr. Berger and his colleagues asked me to stop drinking to support my wife's recovery, not because I had a problem. At least that's not what they said to me. They probably knew, and they probably knew that I didn't know, and that, in fact, I might have a negative reaction to that kind of confrontation. February 21st is my first day of sobriety. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't go to AA. I didn't quit drinking to quit drinking. I didn't pray. I did nothing. I don't understand it, but I am eternally grateful and very humbled by that gift. Be that as it may, fast forward, I got into AA, and I was diligent about getting a sponsor, and that sponsor had me call him every day and go to a meeting every day, and I was diligent about that. And he said, get a book and read it and work the steps, and I was diligent about that. And I worked the steps on my own as diligently as I could. And as the result of my finishing the steps in my very first year, I finished all 12 steps on my own out of the big book. Nothing happened. I didn't know something could or should happen. I was doing the drill. At 4 years of sobriety, I heard a man share in the meeting for just 5 minutes. And he shared differently than I'd ever heard. And I'd been going to daily meetings and step meetings and big book study meetings. And I'd never heard the words. The big book is a textbook. It has specific directions in there, instructions as how to work the steps. And that if you do that, you will have a spiritual awakening. It's guaranteed at step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, and he evidenced it in his demeanor. Tall man, shoulders straight, back straight, walked easily and gently, sat quietly, spoke gently, and when he spoke, his words were wisdom words, and the vibration that I received, the resonance that I had never received from anybody, all my teachers in all my years up to that point. We sat and he talked to me after the meeting. I asked him to share with me what he had done and how he got there. He said, Herb, you have a lot of information, but you have no transformation. It was so powerful because I could see and hear what he was saying. You have a lot of academic knowledge, but it's never been filtered through your heart to your feet, and you don't have any experience of change. He helped me. And the point of that is that he took me through the first 10 steps. Methodically, it took probably about 10 months, and then we're in the 11th step. It's not a step a month. I don't mean to imply that. I spent 4 or 5 months or 6 on step 4. But I'm in now preparing for the 11th step, and he does something. Now, he knows that I have studied to be a Catholic priest for 7 years. I was in a monastery from 1957 to 1964. A monastery, 7 years of silence. I had a lot of classes. I had a lot of information. I had a lot of teachers. I had a lot of direction, and we had lots of time to meditate. And when I left the monastery in July of 1964, I hung up my black robe, and I didn't meditate again for another 25 years. What's that? That's exactly what emotional sobriety is, I believe. I had taken the robe of a monk. Therefore, I meditated because I'm now a monk. When I took the black robe off, I'm not a monk, so I don't meditate. Now, I see that clearly today, but I didn't see it at the time. Of course, I'm just going through the clueless, mindless drill of attempting to survive and live life. I have discovered that anything that comes from the outside to me, it's just like that black robe. I can take it off at any time, which includes codes of ethics and moral behavior. I can take it off at any time. And I did, even 4 years sober, because I was clueless. I didn't know that I had the principles, and I didn't know that I needed some principles I didn't even have. But I learned that in the 4th step through the 9th step. And then he takes me to meditation in step 11, and he says, look it up in the dictionary, Herb. Well, if you haven't done that, treat yourself, because you will then understand what Bill Wilson attempted to communicate to us in those 2.5 pages in the big book, pages 85 to 88. My dictionary says it's the use of the mind to think, the use of the mind to reflect. It's about directed thinking, reflection, and logical deduction from a set of data, information, or facts. A very active use of the mind. I was startled by that definition because I had never seen it before. I had been in a monastery in which we did a contemplative practice, which I thought was meditation, and I had become a sort of a student of or a dilettante with the Buddhist practice, and I had been trained in transcendental meditation, as I think many of us were in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And then he had me read the big book, pages 85 to 88, and highlight it and then outline it. It's very outlineable. Bill starts out when we retire at night. It's a meditation. It's an inventory. Step 4 is the big gross inventory. Step 10, as Dr. Berger just referenced, is that spot check inventory for emotional sobriety during our waking hours. It's not to be done at night. It's not to be done in writing according to the big book and the 12 and 12. It's a spot check inventory on the spot when I'm disturbed. But in the evening, I need to check it out because I've got a little bit more breathing room here at night. So do a radar sweep of your day. How did I do in terms of my alignment with principles? Alignment's my term that I use for step 3 and the purpose of steps 4 through 9. I believe it's the heart and the essence of emotional sobriety. I wrote a definition while we were talking in the prior session. Emotional sobriety is the consciousness of balance of my behavior in alignment with reality as it is, life as it manifests. Alignment is the key there, but consciousness is the process. Step 11 is about consciousness. Listen to the step itself. The mission statement, the value proposition is in the step itself. In the morning when I begin my practice, I do several things. I say my version of the set-aside prayer. Holy Spirit, release me from up till now, detach me from after now, and allow me to be fully present in the now. Because that's what I want to be. I want to be conscious in the present moment. I say the third step prayer. As my commitment to alignment with reality. I want to be in alignment. Look at my hands here. I want to be in alignment with reality because when I'm disturbed, I'm out of alignment. My commitment in the third step is to be in alignment. Steps 4 through 10 are the tools to help me come into and stay into alignment. And step 11 says it right in the step. Sought through prayer and meditation. Okay. Bill's a wordsmith. He doesn't use words casually. This is not poetry. This is a textbook instruction. We sought through prayer and meditation, a very active process. Prayer, and you've heard it in the meetings, I'm sure. It's so simple and yet deeply wise. Prayer is when I'm talking to God. Meditation is when I'm listening to God. Bill says it in the instructions in the big book, upon awakening. Here we go now. This is step 11. And my favorite part of step 11 is the morning. Upon awakening, we ask God to direct our thinking. This man said, he had me read it and highlight it and outline it. So I've got the outline, what we do at night, what we do in the morning, and what we do all day long. I'm a good student. But I still hadn't cracked the code. So he has me line by line. We're discussing it in his living room. We ask God to direct our thinking. Herb, that's a prayer. God, please direct my thinking. I laughed. It was just so simple. And of course, the big book then suggests that we begin thinking. Look at the directions. There's 2. Think about the 24 hours a day and consider your plans for the day. Now, Bill doesn't tell us what that means. So we have the responsibility to interpret it. They're not redundant statements. I'm pretty confident that Bill doesn't use redundant words or redundant statements. He said it in an interview. I was taught in my English courses that we don't use the same word in consecutive sentences. That's why steps and principles or defects and shortcomings are being used. Those are not, they're synonyms. There are no redundancies there. So we think about the 24 hour. I interpret it about my behavior. It's a radar sweep of what I'm going to do today. In my imagination, I look at my day planner. If I have to, I'll open my day planner. Is there anything in my activities, my planned behavior, that's out of alignment with principles that I've now become aware of and incorporated or want to incorporate in my life? And the second, consider your plans for the day. If, in fact, think about the 24 hours ahead is about my behavior, then perhaps consider your plans for the day is about who I'm going to be. So yesterday, I was not so considerate of other people. Today, I'm going to be considerate. Yesterday, there was some not kindness. I'm going to be kind. Yesterday, I was really distracted, especially where I was around a lot of people. Today, I'm going to be more mindful. You see, what I'm doing is I'm focusing on the character defects du jour, or the default fallback positions du jour. I want to correct it today because I'm committed to being a decent human being, a person who contributes to their environment around them and reduces my own suffering, let alone helping other people reduce their suffering. But now here's the key. All of that you've probably heard, you probably know, it's all in the big book. We ask God to direct our thinking, we begin thinking, we consider our plans for the day. Here's what's not in the book, which was the key that unlocked the door forever for me. I've not had a problem with a meditation practice for 33 years, daily. He said, we ask God to direct our thinking. God, please direct my thinking. Then we begin thinking. He said, it's not in the big book. It's not in the 12 and 12. We listen to our thinking as the medium of the message. We listen to our thinking as the possibility of an answer to our prayer. God, please direct my thinking. I begin thinking. Then I listen quietly to the wee small voice, whatever that is in me. It could be my head. It could be my heart. It could be my gut, intuitions, instincts, inspirations. It could be some sensation, some awareness, some imagination, some memory that goes on. I mean, there's so many moving parts for information to flow in us. And we listen to it all and we try to sort out, well, what is in there, the possible breath or inspiration of the Spirit guiding me today? I know from my own review of AA history that Bill was a member of the Oxford group. That's where he learned how to meditate. And their purpose of meditation had only one purpose, and that was guidance. Guidance for their day and guidance for their lives. They kind of did what was two-way prayer. Sometimes they wrote it out. Most of the time they talked it out with somebody else to just make sure that they were getting objective and healthy guidance, because of course the ego is very subtle in us and it can always come up and give us a really good idea that probably just isn't, because it's self-serving or it's warped because of our needs or our family of origin, predispositions, habits, traumas, corrupt thinking, beliefs that are just delusional. Fortunately, as I did the fourth step, I was able to see those beliefs that were delusional, the lenses through which I looked. I was able to see the motives that I had, the corrupt motives of that self-centeredness that Bill talks about on page 62. Selfishness, self-centeredness is the root of our trouble, the root. And everything else is a manifestation of that root, my anger, my fear, my dishonesty, my secrets, my inconsiderate behavior. So at the beginning of my practice, I actually say the 11th step itself, how it's worded, because it reminds me of the mission. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact. I shortened that to consciousness. Of course, it does assume that you've had a healthy experience with steps 2 and 3. the God of your understanding. That's the big book. My preference is the God of my not understanding. Any God that I would understand is way too small because I have a finite mind, and whatever this reality is, it's infinite. And I cannot put the ocean in my bucket. My bucket's too small. So I sit in front of them and in the presence of the mystery, willing to be guided, but also willing to be transformed. So I established a practice of about 15 minutes a day. It built from 1 minute to 15 over a 3-month period. This is back in 1988. And at the end of about 3 to 6 months, I was bored out of my mind with it. I mean, it was kind of like, yeah, it was great early practice. And I went to a man who's very spiritual, had no clue about 12-step process or spirituality, but he was a quick study and he had heard a little bit about it. And I reviewed my history, steps 1 through 10. Now I want to continue to improve my conscious contact. He said, I got it. He said, you're a very task-oriented person, aren't you, Herb? You have a book, you have a Tibetan singing bell, you have a cushion, you have candles, you have all of the accoutrements of a meditator, and by God, you're going to meditate. Oh, yeah, right. Okay. He said, it's not like that, Herb. Meditation is not a task to be performed or an event to attend. Meditation is a process to be experienced. He said, it's not a task. It's a process. You're responsible for the effort. You're not responsible for the results. You're as powerless here. This was the key for me from him that set it right for me so that I can now be quiet and sit and be active and think or not, depending on where I'm at in my particular moment of clarity and consciousness. He said, you're as powerless over your spiritual life as you are over alcohol, having no power at all. You are as powerless over your meditation as you are over your alcohol, having no power at all. Sit in the presence of power, humbled by your powerlessness, and be willing to be changed. Change my life. Listen to my thinking. Be guided by the wee small voice. Don't take it personally in the sense of a task to be accomplished. He said there's only 2 mistakes that you can make: not show up and leave early. Everything in between is none of your business. Oh my God, I love the simplicity. Then when I was walking out of his office, and I'll end with this, he said, oh, by the way, Herb, if you want to know if your meditation is effective, after 90 days of continuous daily practice, ask your wife how you're treating her. Yeah. Pay attention to how you're driving on the freeway. Pay attention to how you treat service personnel in the airline and or in the retail establishment. Because if, in fact, your meditation is effective, your behavior will change and you will change. You'll become a more decent human being. Thanks for inviting me, Alan. And I guess there'll be more next week.
Well, that was phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Bravo, Herb.
Thank you.
Why don't Raj and Tom join me in the room with you for a minute, and we'll just make some brief comments because we usually discuss whatever was said in the first part of the meeting. But it was so fantastic. I don't have too much to say. I don't know what you guys have to say, but the one thing that stood out to me, Herb, was this directed thinking. Because the thinking that comes out of my emotional dependency is so reactive and impulsive. It's not directed at all. It's ready, fire, aim, as you've said so many times, right? And now if I'm going to to really try to integrate this idea of emotional sobriety, well, it's about finding that balance that you talked about.
Yeah.
That, and this, you know, in the way that you're describing this, just really says how important it is for this practice in terms of us finding that balance and finding the words that will get us to reveal the best in us rather than react from this very immature self. Right. And so I love that. It's like now in this space that you talked about us creating, we can discover that, where if I'm off in my emotional upheaval in that space, I'm not going to be able to get in touch with that until I calm things down. And like you said, listen, have the prayer and then listen for the answer in terms of my thinking. So I love that. I thought that was really great. I learned something tonight. That was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Roger got a haircut, Herb. We usually don't see Roger with his hair this short. Raj, why don't you go next?
All right. I just want to thank you, Herb. I'm in shock. Okay. I haven't heard you speak for a long time, man. I am humbled is my real reaction, Herb. You have such a depth of experience and understanding that you speak from, Herb. And it resonates so powerfully, I think. So I just want to thank you for that. And I mean it, but I'm humbled. You just, you know, Buddhism talks about simple mind, right? And man, have you gotten me connected to my simple mind, because I realize how little I know, right? In terms of my conscious understanding, right? When I hear you share and appreciate so much how deeply heartfelt, you know, your words and your message are, Herb. So I don't have a lot to say except thank you, right? And I'll add just one thing. The two pieces that I focus in on the most, that are the most helpful to me, are the message you cited about selfishness and self-centeredness being at the core of our troubles. All right. And I try to hold consciousness every day, all day, as best I can.
Yeah.
About my relationship to that experience, to those behaviors, those feelings connected with not self-care or even healthy self-love, but self-centeredness in the way we use the term, right, and all the damage that it wreaks.
Right.
And then the other thing that came to me at the end is in terms of alignment. The other thing, I don't meditate on a daily basis. I meditate sporadically, but I do try to think and be conscious of through my day of trying to align my heart with a spirit of love, with a spirit toward myself and toward each situation. And I fail every day more times than I can count, right? I mean, every day, more times than I can count. And yet still, it's helped me over the course of decades. It's helped me so much to kind of feel a gentleness inside myself and a love inside myself that I love the experience of feeling connected to, and at least some of the time living from. So
that's the power of intention and the commitment to consciousness. That's the combination.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you once again, Herb, so much.
Thank you.
Tom.
Well, failing every day shows that you're consistent. So I'm proud of you. I mean, even constant, not even, but more than consistent. But Herb, thank you very much. It's like you and I've spent little time together, but it doesn't feel that way to me. Just our interactions in the conference we used to do with Alan, and even just times when we passed in the hallway of the hotel and spoke. You're special to me, and I always understand when how people respond when they're around you and they come from your workshops. And I appreciate you and I honor you. And yeah, and I just, for somebody I don't know all that well, I think I love you.
Thank you.
And I have two things just that I'm just going to repeat because they that's what I wrote down. Meditation is not a task, and meditation is not an event to attend. And those two things they're coming with me. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the rabbis said, we don't meditate to become good meditators. We meditate to improve our consciousness.
I hear a lot of people criticize the 12 steps, that they're old-fashioned. I can understand that criticism. They were written back in 1935. Some people that are agnostic have difficulty with the word God used in the steps. For me, I look at the process that's involved. The forces that the 12 steps generate are so powerful that I think they're ageless. There's this interesting phenomena that happens when you work the steps. They create a charge and then a discharge. The first step, we're powerless. Our life has become unmanageable. It creates this charge. We're in big trouble and we don't know what to do. And then step 2 comes along and it says we have hope. That charge, that existential crisis that we have is resolved. What's happening here is parallel to life. We charge ourselves when we breathe in. When we exhale, we discharge. That's the rhythm of life. And the way I love to think about the 12 steps, it's helping us get connected to the rhythm of life so we can learn how to show up in a good way.